The boarding school director discriminated against a black student not knowing he was the son of the school's founder. You people should learn your place. The words weren't whispered. They weren't even said in passing. They echoed, raw and deliberate, across the marble halls of Whitestone Academy. Khalil James froze, the air in his chest turning heavier than the backpack slung across his shoulder. He had been here less than a week, and already he knew this place wasn't built for him. At least, that's what they wanted him to believe. Whitestone Academy sat perched on a hill like a throne. Its stone walls, aged with ivy, told stories of legacy and power. It was an institution carved out of tradition, prestige, and generations of inherited wealth. You didn't just get in, you were born into it. And Khalil, 17 and proud, had entered like a glitch in the system. Only he wasn't a glitch. He was the son of Charles Everett James, the very man whose endowment rebuilt half the damn school after the fire in '02. But nobody knew that yet, not even the director. Khalil's father, a black tech mogul turned philanthropist, had insisted his son attend anonymous Slido experience the real culture of the school without the cushion of his name. If they respect you, let it be for you, he said. If they don't, then we'll both see what we're really funding. And Khalil had agreed. He wasn't afraid of earning his place. What he hadn't expected was how openly they'd try to erase him. It started with stares, in the dining hall, in the chapel, even in the chemistry lab, where students looked at him like he'd spilled ink on their white tablecloth world. Then came the jokes, half-whispered, but meant to be heard. A banana placed neatly on his chair in Latin class. A faculty member who kept calling him Kian, despite him correcting her 5 times. And then, finally, Director Langston. Tall, silver-haired, with hands always folded behind his back, Director Thomas Langston had run Whitestone like a monarch for 20 years. His word was final. His eyes, sharp as razors, scanned students like they were books on a shelf, ones he often judged by their covers. It was Tuesday morning when Khalil received the email. Subject: academic misconduct, immediate action required. From Director Thomas Langston. Body: Mr. James, it has come to our attention that a recent paper submitted for Ethics 101 bears remarkable similarity to a previously published piece. This level of plagiarism is unacceptable. You are hereby marked with a formal strike. Your grade has been reduced to 0. This will reflect on your permanent record. Khalil's heart hammered in his chest. He hadn't plagiarized. The paper was his, every line, every idea. He'd stayed up for nights working on it, weaving his own experiences of systemic bias into Socratic frameworks. And yet, here he was labeled a cheater. He walked straight to the director's office. Langston didn't ask him to sit. Your kind always pushes boundaries, Mr. James. But we have standards here. My kind? Khalil asked, jaw tight. Langston didn't blink. You heard me. You may think a scholarship entitles you to cut corners, but Whitestone doesn't hand out praise like public schools do. Khalil felt the heat crawl up his neck, but his voice stayed calm. I didn't plagiarize, and I'm not on scholarship. Langston raised a brow. Oh, then how did you find your way in here? Khalil leaned in. Maybe you should ask the board. The director chuckled dismissively. If I did, I doubt they'd even know your name. But they did. 3 days later, the Board of Trustees met for their quarterly review. Khalil's father attended virtually, as always, his camera off, his presence silent. Until Agenda Item 7, Review of Recent Academic Disciplinary Actions. Langston presented confidently. We take misconduct seriously. This student, Khalil James, represents a deviation from our academic integrity. One of the trustees, a woman in a red blazer, tapped her pen. Did you personally investigate the plagiarism claim? Langston's smile faltered. I trusted our AI system. The result was clear. A voice cut through the room, deep and cold. Did you read the paper? The screen blinked on. Charles Everett James III stared through it, his expression like stone. Because I did. And not only is it original, it's brilliant. The room shifted. Charles continued. More importantly, I found the director's language surrounding my son to be concerning. Deeply concerning. Langston blinked. Your son. I wanted to see if the culture at Whitestone had improved. Clearly, it has not. A long silence. Then murmurs. I will be withdrawing all future donations until Director Langston is no longer employed, Charles said flatly. And I'll expect a formal apology made to Khalil publicly. By the time Khalil walked into ethics class the next morning, The atmosphere had changed. Heads turned, but not with mockery, with uncertainty, with shame. The banana joke stopped. The whispers ended. Langston's office door was shut for the first time in years. But Khalil didn't walk taller because of who his father was. He walked taller because they tried to bury him, and he made them watch him rise. Khalil didn't go to class that day. Not because he was scared or embarrassed, but because he needed to breathe. Alone. Away from the corridors where eyes suddenly widened with recognition, not respect. He knew what was happening. Fear was beginning to replace ignorance. But fear wasn't the same thing as justice. He climbed to the old overlook behind the rugby field, a quiet hilltop where the stone of the school gave way to grass and wind and sky. He had first discovered it during orientation, when nobody was paying attention to the black kid with the quiet voice. Funny how silence had become his best weapon. No tantrum, no confrontation, just the truth dropped at the right moment. He opened his backpack and pulled out his ethics paper. Still there. Untouched, ungraded, and now unmistakably seen. Let them read it now, he muttered to himself. Let them choke on every word. His phone buzzed. Text from Dad. Proud of you. Do you want me to pull you out? We can transfer you anywhere. Khalil stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. No, I want to finish what I started. Because it wasn't just about him anymore. That evening, Director Langston was nowhere to be found at dinner. His usual head-of-the-table seat stood vacant, like a toppled statue. In his place, Assistant Headmaster Grove made brief remarks about institutional accountability and ongoing investigations. No one mentioned Khalil by name, but the silence around him was thick and shifting. The students who once avoided eye contact now seemed curious. A few even nodded at him. But Khalil didn't return the nods. Not yet. He returned to his dorm to find an envelope slipped under his door. Mr. James, you have been cleared of all academic misconduct. Please see me tomorrow at 9 a.m. for a formal meeting. Dr. Marilyn Shore, Board Liaison. Khalil stared at the signature. Dr. Shore had been on the board for 10 years, one of the few women and the only black woman on it. He'd heard his father mention her once. Said she had more backbone than the rest of them combined. Maybe she was the reason this wasn't being buried. At 9 sharp the next morning, Khalil stood outside the administrative wing. It looked different now, smaller somehow. Dr. Shore greeted him herself, dressed in navy blue, her silver braids wrapped into a regal bun. Khalil James, she said, extending her hand. I've been waiting to meet you. Good morning, ma'am, he said, steadying his breath. Thank you for all of this. She smiled. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to ask a lot of you. They sat together in the board conference room, the long table polished to a blinding shine. Across it sat 4 other board members, including the woman in the red blazer from the meeting. None of them wore the smug expressions of typical elites. Today they looked nervous. Dr. Shore folded her hands. We want to formally apologize for the treatment you've received at Whitestone. It does not reflect the values this school claims to uphold. Khalil raised an eyebrow. Claims to is the right phrase. One of the older men shifted in his chair. We're reviewing Langston's tenure. But we also want to know what you need to stay. To heal. Khalil didn't hesitate. I want my paper published. In Whitestone's ethics journal. That's highly unusual for a first-year student, the red blazer woman said. It's not unusual, Dr. Shore cut in. It's uncomfortable. There's a difference. Khalil looked straight at her. I want the students who mocked me to read what I wrote. I want it discussed in class. And I want a student equity committee run by students, not faculty, with real power to report and escalate cases of discrimination. The boardroom fell quiet. You're asking to change the culture, one of them finally said. No, Khalil replied. I'm asking you to let us change it. Dr. Shore smiled faintly, then turned to the others. I second the motion. Who else? Hands slowly lifted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unanimous. By Friday, the campus buzzed with rumors. Director Langston had taken a leave of absence. Assistant Headmaster Grove was interim acting director. No one said the word fired. But everyone knew. And in his absence, something strange happened. Light began to pour into spaces that had long been kept in shadow. Khalil's ethics paper, titled The Morality of Mirrors, on seeing what society refuses to face, was reprinted in the school's official journal. He didn't just write about racism. He wrote about silence. about how institutions built on silence always collapse under the weight of their own lies. And suddenly, students who had never spoken to him before were quoting his work in class, debating it, challenging it, respecting it. He had become a symbol, but he didn't want to be. He wanted to be Khalil. Late one night, as he sat alone in the library, flipping through an old edition of the Whitestone yearbook, he heard a voice. "Hey." He looked up. It was Julian Carrington, white, lacrosse captain, son of a senator, one of the boys who had laughed the loudest during orientation week. "Got a minute?" Julian asked. Khalil closed the book. "Do I?" Julian approached slowly, his voice lower. "Look, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to say something. That first week, I said things I thought were jokes. I didn't realize how much harm they did." "You didn't realize?" Khalil asked, deadpan. Julian winced. "I know. I was ignorant. I thought this place gave me permission. And maybe it did." Silence. Julian added, "But I read your paper. Twice. It wrecked me." Khalil didn't speak. "I want to help with the equity committee," Julian said quietly. "Not to fix my guilt. Just to listen and change." Khalil studied him, then nodded slowly. "If you're serious, come to the meeting Sunday. Don't talk. Just listen." Julian nodded. "Fair." As he left, Khalil exhaled. He wasn't sure if Julian had really changed, but he knew this. Words had power. And now, they had a platform. Sunday's meeting took place in a spare lecture room, packed with over 30 students, black, Asian, Latino, white, queer, poor, scholarship kids, rich kids. For the first time, they weren't divided by who they were or where they came from. They were united by what they refused to tolerate. The committee chose Khalil as its first student chair. He didn't campaign. He didn't need to. "I'm not here to fix Whitestone alone," he told the room. "But I am here to make sure no one else has to fight the same battles in the dark." He looked around, eyes lit with resolve. Heads nodded. "We don't need Whitestone to be perfect. We just need it to finally see." The days that followed weren't easy. Change never was. For every hand that reached out to Khalil, there were still whispers in the corners, eyes that rolled when he entered the room, boys who muttered he got Langston fired, like it was a badge of dishonor. But Khalil didn't flinch. He saw the glances, felt the tension, but he'd walked through worse. The Student Equity Committee met twice a week. What began as a cautious gathering soon turned into something powerful. Real stories emerged. Ella Gonzalez, a Cuban-American girl in 11th grade, spoke about the time her accent had been mocked by a teacher. A trans student named Devin shared how their dorm supervisor refused to use their chosen name. And then there was Amir, a quiet freshman from Detroit, who hadn't spoken once all semester until he told the group how his roommate refused to share a closet with him because black clothes probably smelled different. These weren't just anecdotes. They were patterns, evidence. Khalil took careful notes at every session. He started building a rapport not for revenge, but for reckoning. "We're not here to cancel people," he told the group one night. "We're here to expose the infection. Sunlight is the cure." But Whitestone didn't heal quietly. There were pushbacks. During assembly, an anonymous pamphlet was passed around titled, "Don't Let Guilt Rewrite Tradition." It called the Equity Committee a political stunt, accused Khalil of exploiting his father's name, and warned of the erosion of Whitestone's legacy. Khalil found one of the pamphlets stuffed into his locker. He read it calmly, then posted it on the Equity Committee bulletin board with a sticky note. "This is why we exist." Dr. Shore, meanwhile, worked behind the scenes like a silent tide. Policies were revised. The faculty were now required to attend racial bias training. A new anonymous reporting system was introduced. Most significantly, the board approved Khalil's request to turn the Student Equity Committee into a permanent body, protected in the school charter. But while some changes happened on paper, Khalil knew the real battle was inside hearts, and that battlefield was slow, messy, human. One afternoon, while walking to his political theory class, Khalil was stopped by Professor Winslow. "I read your ethics paper," she said. Khalil braced himself. "It's better than anything I've read from a student in years." He blinked. "Thank you." She hesitated. "But you'll need thicker skin than most if you're going to keep doing what you're doing." "I'm not looking to be tough," Khalil said. "I'm looking to make things fair." Professor Winslow's eyes softened. "Well, keep going. Just remember, some of the loudest protests come from the most frightened people." By mid-semester, the ripple effects of Khalil's presence had reached even the alumni board. Old graduates, some in support, some furious, began writing in. The school's official Facebook page saw arguments erupt in comment sections. One former student declared, "This school was never about race. Why make it about that now?" To which someone else replied, "Maybe because race was always there, you just never had to feel it." Khalil's father stayed quiet in public, but called regularly. "I'm watching," he said one night, "and I'm proud. But be careful, son. The system protects itself." "I know," Khalil answered, "but I'm not alone." And he wasn't. Julian Carrington had kept showing up, listening, taking notes, apologizing when needed, standing up when it counted. Other unlikely allies emerged too. Chloe Lee, daughter of a powerful donor, started documenting faculty microaggressions. Trey, a mixed-race student who'd spent his first year pretending to be white passing, finally told his story aloud. Even a few faculty members began speaking up in staff meetings, in classrooms, in quiet hallways. But nothing prepared Khalil for what happened in April. It was Parents' Weekend. The entire campus glistened with forced perfection. Banners hung from every archway. Tables were dressed in blue and gold linen. Smiles were crisp, conversations rehearsed. And among the polished guests walking the grounds, Khalil spotted one familiar figure: Director Langston. He wasn't supposed to be on campus. But there he was, dressed in his signature charcoal suit, shaking hands with a group of donors near the chapel. Khalil froze. Langston saw him and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind that said, "I'm still here." Khalil clenched his fists and walked past. But something in his gut twisted. Langston wasn't done. That evening, Khalil found an email in his inbox. Subject: Draft Faculty Statement. Attached was a PDF titled "Statement on the Dangers of Overcorrection." The document warned against student-driven mobs and claimed the new Equity Committee was suppressing free thought. It was signed by 12 faculty members, including 2 of Khalil's current teachers. He sat in silence, the weight of it crashing down. They weren't just pushing back now. They were organizing. The next day, the Student Equity Committee met in crisis mode. Tension crackled in the air. "We knew this would happen," Chloe said. "Power doesn't give up quietly." "But faculty?" Amir asked. "Some of them sat with us. They nodded. They listened. They pretended to," Julian muttered. Devin tapped the table. "Then we fight smarter. Facts. Data. We document everything." Khalil stood. "No. We do more than defend. We go forward." He pulled out the report he had been compiling since the committee's founding. It was over 80 pages: notarial testimonies, recorded comments, comparative data from other private schools, student survey results, even faculty patterns. "We publish this," he said. "In the school newspaper. In the alumni letter. Everywhere. And I'll sign it. Alone, if I have to." Julian looked up. "Not alone. I'll sign it too." One by one, the others followed. Chloe, Devin, Ella, Amir, dozens more by the week's end. The Whitestone Report, as it became known, dropped on a Wednesday morning. By noon, the campus was in uproar. By nightfall, national education blogs were sharing the story. And by the weekend, CNN had called. Khalil didn't want fame, but now he had it. His name was trending. His story, son of a black founder, targeted by the school he helped build, became a symbol across the country. Young justice warrior. Private school whistleblower. The Mirror Whitestone didn't want. But with attention came danger. He received hate mail, online threats. One anonymous message read, "You'll regret what you've done to this school." The administration remained mostly silent. Dr. Shore stayed in contact, but warned that things were escalating politically. Khalil's father offered to fly him out. But Khalil stayed. "You sure?" his dad asked over the phone. Khalil's voice was calm. "They're scared now. And scared people talk loud but run when you stand." The student body divided sharply. Rallies broke out on both sides, some supporting Khalil's reforms, others demanding the school return to tradition. A group of seniors staged a walkout, accusing the board of bowing to identity politics. Meanwhile, a petition to reinstate Langston floated online with over 1,000 alumni signatures. But Khalil wasn't shaken. He had expected backlash. He just hadn't expected what came next. A late-night knock on his dorm door. He opened it to find Dr. Marilyn Shore, visibly shaken. "We need to talk," she said. "Langston, he's threatening legal action. He says your report defamed him." Khalil's breath caught. "But everything in it is true." "I know. But truth doesn't always protect you in court." especially when power's involved. Then what do we do? She looked him in the eyes. We take it further. Public. Official. You give your testimony before the full board. On record. We make the truth louder than the threat. Khalil nodded. He was ready. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning. 10 a.m. sharp. Location: Whitestone's Great Hala Room, usually reserved for commencement and donor dinners, now transformed into a tribunal chamber. Heavy velvet curtains had been drawn back to let the sunlight in, as if the room itself needed cleansing. Students weren't allowed in, but word had spread. Groups huddled outside the carved oak doors, phones in hand, whispering, waiting. Inside, the long table at the front held the entire board of trustees, 10 members in total. Dr. Shore sat in the center. Beside her, a school-appointed attorney. Across from them, seated with unnerving calm, was Thomas Langston, dressed immaculately, his suit sharper than ever, his eyes void of regret. Khalil entered alone. No legal team, no father by his side, just his presence. He walked to the podium, opened his folder, and took a breath. My name is Khalil Everett James, 17 years old, enrolled at Whitestone Academy by merit and personal choice, not by favor or legacy. I came here under my mother's last name, not to hide, just to see. I wanted to understand how this place treated someone without the armor of wealth or a recognizable name. He paused, then looked straight at Langston. I didn't plagiarize. I didn't disrupt. I didn't lie, but I was punished as if I had, because of the color of my skin, because I didn't match the idea of who belonged. Langston shifted but didn't speak. Khalil continued. Director Langston never asked me about my paper. He didn't check the references. He didn't speak to my instructor. He saw a young black student writing about moral philosophy and assumed the work couldn't possibly be mine. Khalil opened his folder and lifted a printed copy of the Whitestone Report. This report documents experiences far beyond mine. Students of color mocked in dorms. LGBTQ students outed or ignored. Faculty members who dismissed complaints with smirks. A culture of silence masked by tradition. This isn't just about one man. It's about an entire system designed to protect itself at the expense of those who challenge it. A trustee on the far left cleared his throat. Mr. James, you understand that Director Langston is considering a defamation suit against you? I do, Khalil replied evenly. But I didn't make this up. I lived it. And I'm not the only one. From his seat, Langston finally spoke. This is character assassination, cloaked in emotional theatrics. The boy wanted attention and got it. Now he's burning down the school that gave him a chance. No, Khalil said quietly. I'm saving the school that forgot who built it. Gasps rippled through the room. He turned back to the board. My father didn't donate millions to Whitestone so that it could gatekeep excellence. He believed education should challenge minds, not identities. And I believe that, too. Which is why I'm asking this board not just to investigate Langston's actions, but to commit to structural reform. Permanent. Transparent. Student-powered. The hall fell silent. Dr. Shore leaned forward. Thank you, Khalil. Your testimony will be recorded and preserved as part of this hearing. Langston stood. I will not be spoken of like this without rebuttal. You already spoke, Dr. Shore said coolly. For 20 years. And for the first time, Langston sat down in silence. 2 days later, the decision was made public. Effective immediately, Director Thomas Langston is dismissed from all administrative duties and permanently disassociated from Whitestone Academy. But the announcement didn't stop there. The board released a full report acknowledging the patterns Khalil had exposed. They pledged to fund a new social equity and reform center on campus staffed by students and advisors, given the power to audit, to report, and to educate. Bias training would be mandatory, not optional. Faculty would be held accountable. Anonymous reports would now be tracked and investigated by a third-party panel. And at the request of Khalil himself, the inaugural ethics journal of the upcoming academic year would be renamed the James Edition, dedicated to truth-telling in hostile spaces. That weekend, Khalil received a letter. Handwritten. Delivered by courier. Dear Khalil, I fought your father when he first tried to change this school. I told him his ideas would tear down tradition. I was wrong then. And I'd be wrong now not to say, thank you. You didn't just defend your dignity. You taught this institution to look in the mirror. If there's hope for Whitestonites because of you. With respect, Dr. Lionel Worthington, Board Trustee Emeritus. Khalil reread the letter twice before folding it back into the envelope. Outside, the spring air carried the smell of rain and the low murmur of returning normalcy. Except this time, it wasn't the old normal. Something had shifted. In the dining hall, students of color spoke louder. In class, more diverse voices were being called on. Teachers hesitated before making offhand comments. Change was slow, but it was happening. And Khalil? He wasn't done. He continued leading the equity committee, mentoring younger students, pushing the board on deadlines. But he also allowed himself to laugh more, to rest. He joined the spoken word club. He made real friends. Even Julian, now a regular co-organizer, became someone he could trust. One night, Khalil sat under the same oak tree from the beginning of the semester. The stars above seemed clearer now. Or maybe he had simply earned the clarity. His phone buzzed again. Text from Dad. You made something better than legacy. You made history. Khalil smiled, typing his reply. History's not finished yet. Then he closed his phone, leaned back, and let himself exhale. Because this wasn't just the story of a boy who proved them wrong. It was the story of a system that could no longer ignore the truth. And the boy who made sure they'd never forget it. The end. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.